Welcome back. As Washington pivots inward with the sweeping One Big Beautiful Bill Act, Africa finds itself navigating new global headwinds from rising remittance costs and tougher U.S. visa rules to shrinking green finance and shifting trade dynamics. With AGOA hanging in the balance and Ghana's economic ties to the U.S. facing fresh uncertainty, what should our business leaders and policymakers be watching most closely? Joining me is Ajua Ejechum, Chief Executive of OBBBA Group, a leading advisory firm connecting African decision makers to global finance and policy arenas to help unpack the real implications of this landmark U.S. law for Ghana and the continent at large. Thank you for joining us on the exchange, on the marketplace. Thank you, Ajua. So first off, Ghana receives billions in remittances annually, much of it from the U.S. diaspora. How concerned should we be about the new 1% remittance tax under the Act? And what can Ghanaian policymakers do to mitigate the impact on households and small businesses?
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me this afternoon. Yes, so Ghana does receive quite a lot. It's estimated that the country receives between 2 to 2.5 billion a year from the US alone in remittances. And so, yes, the 1% tax will increase the total charges on an estimate. Ghana, or I would say in general, remittances cost between around 7.9% in fees on an average. So that 1% will increase that figure to almost 9%. And that, in terms of what does that mean for the country, we are looking at around $23 million a year that is going to be lost in remittances to these 1% fees. If we look at the figure of the 2 to 2.5 billion that comes into the country, that's a significant amount of money that is lost from healthcare, from entrepreneurs, and also from education. And so I will encourage the Ghanaian policymakers to engage directly with the U.S. authorities to seek some kind of relief from these taxes. But at the same time, also efforts should be made at home to reduce transfer costs through better financial technologies.
Yes, and with the U.S. scaling back support for clean energy under the new legislation, what risks do you foresee for Ghana's renewable energy ambitions, and how should we position ourselves to attract alternative sources of green finance?
That's a very interesting question. So yes, the beautiful bill has rolled back several sort of U.S. Clean energy incentives. And this is directly going to have an impact in Ghana. So if we look at Africa as a whole, Africa currently needs about $100 billion a year to be able to meet their clean energy goals. And they do receive at the moment less than 20 billion of that money. So already there is an issue there. You could see that they're not getting the sufficient funding, and that includes Ghana in total. So this rollback is going to have a significant effect, especially given that a lot of the funding was coming from the U.S. The U.S., both private sector and public sector, is also shifting towards fossil fuel and pulling away from clean energy projects. Ghana must look beyond U.S. partners. They must look to countries like the UAE, places like the European Union, and also other philanthropic organizations. I will also encourage that, they do that, but as well as blended finance models that share the risk between both public sector and private sector is going to be key for this to happen.
Let's talk about what everyone is talking about, the new visa fees and validity restrictions affecting African nationals. What does this mean for Ghanaian students, professionals, and families with U.S. ties? And how can OBBBA Group support mobility and opportunity despite these barriers?
Yeah, so the new visa fees, it came into effect actually 8th of July, so this month. And yes, it's affecting about 31 countries, including Ghana. And of course, previously you could go to the U.S. Embassy. After waiting for almost a year for your appointment, you could get a visa for up to 5 years, multiple entry. Now that has been reduced to one single entry, and it's only for 3 months. This is going to affect students a lot. It makes it more costly. There are several other fees that has also increased for this visa applications. So yeah, there's going to be a significant impact on Ghanaian students, professionals, and even families. And yes, for business travelers, I will encourage that Africans or Ghanaians should be looking at, I would say, trading within the continent more. EBI Group is addressing this. We are hosting the African Leaders and Partners Summit in partnership with the George Washington University in September. And we are bringing in several leaders from across Africa, from Europe, and also the Trump administration to have a lot of these very critical conversations and to see what can be done as a result.
Yeah, another hot topic is the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act. So with AGOA not extended in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and no new frameworks in place, what are the trade risks and opportunities for Ghana? Should we be worried about a vacuum in U.S.-Africa trade relations?
Yeah, there is some kind of a risk there. And whilst members of Congress in the U.S. currently are still calling for the AGOA to be extended, it is clear that the future, even if it's extended, and we are hoping that by September, I know that when Trump hosted the 5 African leaders 2 weeks ago, that question of AGOA was brought up, and he said, well, we'll look into it. So we're hoping that something happens. Of course, AGOA shouldn't have been covered in the beautiful bill, but there should have been some mention of some trade relationships. We're hoping that it's extended, but even if it does get extended, which we don't know if it will be a very different looking AGOA from the previous AGOA. It will be more focused on mutually beneficial sort of trade relationship rather than the previous AGOA with so much tariffs. I will encourage that the Ghana will work more harder by improving its trade systems, exploring sort of new materials and staying very close to the U.S.-Africa trade discussions. But I will encourage the country to be positioned in a way that would bring so much value to the market.
Yeah, as your final one, you've emphasized the need for Africa to remain agile and proactive. What role can the African private sector, particularly in Ghana, play in shaping future engagements with the U.S.? And how is your group facilitating that through initiatives like the ALP Forum?
Well, thank you again. So back in April, we hosted the African Leaders and Partners Forum, again, alongside the World Bank IMF spring meetings. And we had several leaders, including someone from the Trump administration, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary. He stressed on the fact that the U.S. is looking to work with the African innovators, especially those that are providing solutions, not just for African problems, but global problems. And so there's really the way forward will be for the private sector to innovate, be innovative, come up with solutions that is way beyond Ghana, that will catch the attention of the United States, because they are ready to partner, of course, mutually beneficial. But also the EBI Group, yes, we are constantly engaging. We are partnering with several organizations here in the U.S. And of course, even with our current our summit that is coming up in September, we have the diaspora banking community, and these are some of the major banks that has been led by the diaspora in the U.S. They're looking to engage. They're looking to support the continent, especially given that the U.S. government and the private sector may not so much be focused on the continent. I would say the diaspora is going to be playing a role, and we are working with them on that as well.
All right. Good to see you. I'm great to speak with you, Adjoa J. Chum, president of the EBI Group. Thank you so much for joining us for the exchange.